Well, thank you for staying with us. Well, our second conversation now, subject to approval of the National Assembly, the federal government will be spending 8.07 trillion naira on five priority sectors for government. The sectors are defense and security, education, health, infrastructure and social development and poverty reduction programs. Defense and security sector has the highest vote of 2.74 trillion naira, 13% of the total budget. That amount includes recurrent and capital expenditure voted for the military, police, intelligence, and paramilitary. But that's because Nigeria is facing much of insecurity challenges that has gradually disrupted production and pushed up prices of farm produce across the country. Speaking at the ministerial presentation of the 2023 draft budget, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, disclosed that the federal government's total debt to the CBN through Ways and Means currently stands at 20 trillion naira. Well, let's understand these figures. Mr. Paul Alaje, he is a senior economist and partner at SPM Professionals. He joins us now via Zoom. Thank you so much, Mr. Alaje. Finally, we are having you on the show after the challenges of the other day. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so very much for having me.
Let's start with the breakdown of this spending plan. We've talked a lot around the recurrence, the deficits, and all that is in this document. Yeah, we could still touch on that. But what do you make of the sectoral allocation that we have at the moment? Security is getting 13% of the entire spending plan, while 3.3 trillion naira is kept for the almighty subsidy for 6 months. What is your reaction to this allocation?
Well, my reaction to this is that the budget sectoral analysis is really not different from what we have had in the past. The pattern, if you look at the standard deviation from what we had before, is really not much. So the economic outlook may not be totally different from what we had previously. You will not want to blame federal government for allocating that whopping amounts to security. Because if you ask me, what can we do without security in economy, I will tell you the two of them are cement strings. There is nothing you can do with A without B. So they work together. They are jointed. There is no economy without security. But will that amount be enough? My only concern about what has been allocated to security, maybe it's available, it's just not in public domain, is the kind of result we have seen, or maybe what would have happened that the public is not seeing. Maybe.
Well, Mr. Paul Alaje there. Again, I hope we're able to reconnect with him if network permits us so that we can continue this discussion. Mr. Alaje, are you there? Go ahead, Mr. Alaje. Okay, we're still trying to get Mr. Alaje back to continue this discussion. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the 2023. Mr. Alaje, you're there. Go ahead. We lost your audio. We can't hear you.
If the exchange rate were to be what it was 3 years ago or what it was 5 years ago, I tell you, there will be no subsidy. Just let's look at how much we're importing crude today at official rate. If the rate were to be 199 or 200 or 240 or 250 or 360, there is certainly no way we would say we are still paying for subsidy. So subsidy has not becoming a block, a stumbling block, or a wage that is tied around the neck.
All right, let's look at the 2023 proposed budget framework. What I have here, revenue from oil is expected to be 1.92 trillion naira. Non-oil revenue is about 2.43 trillion naira. Independent revenue, 2.21 trillion naira. Other revenues, 762 billion naira. Retained revenue, 2.42 trillion naira. And of course, the budget is titled Budget of Fiscal Consolidation and Transition, because obviously it's a transitional budget that will move from one administration to another administration. So, of course, all of this needs to be taken into consideration. Pensions and gratuity is expected to take 854.8 billion naira. Personnel cost, 4.9 trillion naira. Overhead, 1.1 trillion naira here. And of course, capital expenditure is 5.35 trillion naira. Government-owned enterprises are expected to generate at 2.42 trillion naira. And debt service is 6.31 trillion naira. Sinking fund, 247.73 billion naira. Well, total revenue is about 11.09 trillion naira. Deficit, 10.8 trillion naira. And of course, total expenditure is 20.51 trillion naira. Mr. Paul Alaje, do we have you back so we can continue this discussion?
Yes, yes.
Go ahead. We couldn't even get to that point at all.
So the bottom line of what I said earlier was that exchange rates remain a major challenge. And let me say this: if the central bank, for some reason, for some monetary reasons, decide to devalue naira again, it means that government will have to pay more for subsidy. And subsidy is not the only thing government will be paying for. Even all foreign loans, external debt, we will also have to look for more money to pay for them. Where will this money come from? When you look at the budget very carefully, more than 50%, that is, of every 1 naira government spend, more than 50 kobo of what government spend will be borrowed. What does that mean? It means that what we are using to fight the war against insecurity, 50% borrowed. What it means again is that each time we are servicing debt, 50% of money we spent on servicing is borrowed. Anytime we want to implement projects, 50% of the money spent is borrowed. More importantly, 50% of all monies we give to members of National Assembly, borrowed. 50% of money we give politicians to cook, for different political offices is also borrowed. That means we are borrowing the future to consume today, at least by more than 50%. Not my figures, according to the budget that was presented by Mr. President.
A lot has been said. You've touched also on the assumptions, which many say seems to be conservative enough, particularly when you look at the price of crude per barrel placed at $70. Seems fair. At the moment, it's doing about above $90. We also expect to generate about 1.69 million barrels per day. All of this, some say with the current situation we have on ground, it's really achievable. So more funds might come in. And then PC came up today to say about 400,000 barrels will be added as Shell for Cardos is back on stream. What do you make of that? More revenue for the country.
Good news that Shell for Cardo is back on stream. The question is, for how long will they be back? Until we are able to solve structural issues that is affecting theft, whether we call it insecurity of life and property or insecurity of assets.
All right, there again. There we go again. Not trying to get in. Mr. Paul Alaje, I don't know why the network is in this way from this end. We had a smooth ride, the first discussion. But this time around, it's just not as expected at all. Mr. Alaje, are you there? Go ahead, we can hear you. Well, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll try to reconnect with Mr. Paul Alaje. Don't go away. We're glad to have you back. Mr. Paul Alaje is still with us, and we're talking about the assumptions, and I talked about avocados. You are making a point that how long would that stay on for? Take it away from there.
Okay, so for how long are we going to keep maintaining what we know is not working? We must get to a point where structurally we get to a point of development, and those that are perpetuating evil, we are able to deal with them decisively. If you are not able to do that, we will keep making projections, hoping that things will work. We have projected over 1.8 million barrels a day this year. We are not able to meet up, because this year we have seen revelation from journalists how our oil has been stolen. Journalists made that revelation known to us, and many Nigerians, myself inclusive, we were in shock. So making a projection of 1.6 million, again, recall that we have had a conversation several months ago, I remember with you on your studio, about how some of the oil fields are projected to dry up. So how are we going to continue to depend on those? And recall that we also say that Nigeria is a country that flows with milk and honey. Of 20 trillion naira budget, 20 trillion and more, less than 2 trillion is what is coming from crude oil. Is that not worrisome? Less than 10%. It doesn't mean that we have suddenly expanded our non-oil sector. Because when you look at it in real terms and in dollar terms, you see that the increase we have seen is relatively marginal. Therefore, we need to do something about culture of discipline in our country, so that if we have export, it will be truly export and it will count in the covers of government.
Let's look at non-oil, which is also a space you just talked about. Oil doing about 10% of the spending plan, and we see non-oil also springing up one way or the other. We see it better than it used to do before now. What is your take with regards to that? Are we still focused on diversification?
Well, we have made several projections. Recall that non-oil is going to contribute nearly 10%, but it does not mean that non-oil will contribute nearly 90%. Because this budget, we are having a significant amount. The biggest way of financing this budget is debt. Debt will be a major source of finance. The remaining will go to non-oil sector. So if we are saying that non-oil sector is doing about 40% of the budget, oil sector doing about 10%, exactly on what are we budgeting. It means we are budgeting on borrowing. Now, of that amount that is non-oil, oil, and debt, we are now going to spend significant amount to service. Spend another significant amount to pay subsidy. So when you look at these issues, you know that it is not just about saying we are improving non-oil, which I give credit to government, by the way, that non-oil sector is expanding. But I'm saying that holistically, for our budgetary plan, we need to do more so that we will not say that if not, and I can tell you, I remember in 2016, when government said we're going to be expecting independent revenue, we were not able to meet the target. Eventually, when we did the half-year review of the budget and full-year review in the subsequent MTF, we saw that we're not able to meet up. So what we call economic recovery and growth plan, even though we saw that the Nigerian economy eventually came out of recession, but was it as a result of the budget? The answer will remain no, because economic recovery and growth plan was not able to meet several targets, which includes unemployment target, inflationary target, growth target. It was not able to meet all of those targets. Therefore, we have made a budget, and we are saying we want to meet certain amount from non-oil sector. I strongly believe that the non-oil sector in that budget can do as much as 80%. But to do the 80%, we will need to roll our sleeves. We will need to work with different orientation, and we will certainly need to adopt technology.
Before I let you go, flooding is something that is worrying Nigerians at the moment. People sacked from their homes, farmlands, and all of that. And Nigeria is also looking at the sidelines of the IMF to either take advantage of the IMF food security package. Now, do you think that is the way to go? And what impact would this have on our agricultural space? I mean, flooding.
Let me start by saying, what impact is it already having as a player in the rice value chain?
Yes.
I can tell you the price of rice 2 months ago. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Clearly.
Okay, so the price of rice 2 months ago from factory, not the one you buy in the market, from factory was between 25,500 to about 27. Today, the price of rice from factory, and I'm talking of standard rice, is between 32,000 to 35,000 from factory. A couple of days ago in Warri, from the opinion we pulled, people were, from the report we got rather, people were buying rice from 38 to 42,000. In Osogbo, people bought rice for 37 to 38,000. This is a gap of 5,000 from what they bought at least 2 months ago. That has changed. Putin has remained in Ukraine, and he continued to rake shellings on Ukraine, so that is not new. That has affected price. What has changed in the last 3 weeks to 1 month is flood. So because we did not prepare for it, we have seen the biggest rice farm being submerged with interview on different media. What does it mean for Nigerians? It means we should in fact prepare. Because this flood will affect food inflation. By the next time you get a report from National Bureau of Statistics, but don't stop at that. Even headline inflation will be influenced. This is the time politicians have started to spend money. Hold on, people are preparing for December. People will also spend money. All loads falling on who? Inflation. And central bank will respond by saying we will keep mopping up, increasing interest rate because politicians will spend money. December is coming. How do we increase NPR? You might also witness an increase, even though people may criticize central bank, but I don't think there's any other thing they can do by increasing NPR in their next meeting. Keep that as an equation. What is the implication? Implication of this is that while inflation will still grow anyway, but central bank and monetary policy committee can slow the growth rate of inflation. What they cannot slow is what.
Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Mr. Paul Alaje there being able to at least make his point on some of the questions raised with regards to the sectoral allocation of Nigeria's 2023 spending plan. Mr. Paul, if you can hear me, I must thank you so much for your time on the show. We appreciate this.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, sir.